Hi, my name's Damara. You may know me, you may not. I'm a holistic life coach, and I have been doing the work on myself and also assisting others in their path to being who they truly are. But this video is being filmed here because Aubrey Marcus, you asked the world to rip off your mask, and we are doing that. We have to do that because of the illusion around the whole idea of what you are announcing to the world. The new decree on radical monogamy, which is really radical polygamy or polyamorous. Let's talk about energy first, because that's where everyone needs to go right now, into what is their energy field telling them, not only about themselves, but about everybody in their lives. We are heading for the biggest upgrade in frequency of the planet and obviously of us, because if we can't meet that frequency, that resonance, then we're not going to be able to even stay sane. So this is all about energy, and that's what I want to look at first, because this is how this needs to be seen. I've just been doing a little bit more research as I was doing household chores this morning, listening to yet another Aubrey Marcus video, although this one was labelled up as Vailana, and it was about her escape from exile on sexuality. And oh my goodness, I could only watch 20 minutes of that. I mean, I have not been a fan, a follower of Aubrey Marcus over the years. I did dip into him at one point when Matthias de Stefano came forward with all his revelations about remembering all his past lives. And I thought at the time that Matthias should not have been with Marcus as one of his interviewers, because Marcus was not on the level to help Matthias be who he needed to be as well, since he'd come into his revelations about past lives and started to come into the world with that, because it just seemed the wrong fit. And I was picking up on the energy of Aubrey Marcus at the time. And let's talk about energy. What's in our world right now? Think about the energy of Sean Diddy Combs. How did he do it? How did he pull in all those intelligent people? I know it's a huge world of celebrities. Oh God, I can't even say the word, of these famous people. And there is a sort of hierarchy. But how did this man, who, when you look at him now sitting in that courtroom with his very almost sour face and deterred look, I mean, how did he do it? He did it with energy. He did it with the energy of fame, which brings a sort of slurry of a different energy into the field. And the only thing I can relate this to is when, in the early days of my being a holistic therapist and life coach, I was pulled into the world just locally, because they had country homes of some of the pop stars of the time. And there was one man that I remember who is still in that field today. And it was really interesting for me, because I'd been told that he wanted a reading from me and wanted to have a mentoring session. And I was like really, interested in the fact that his field was different. And when I went into the room, I could feel it. But it wasn't that it was a high-end energy. I mean, remember, I'm a meditator of over 40 years on a formal technique that gives you mastery of your mind, so that your mind isn't flipping in and out and confusing what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. So that's my expertise, is that I can come from that point of a big clarity coming in from the higher energies of my real self. But it was just interesting because it was like a different slurry of energy. And I have to call it a slurry because I'm not talking about another experience I had, which I'm going to tell you next, with a man who was bringing knowledge to the West from his country and was giving meditation techniques, because that was a completely different experience when I was in his energy field. But with this guy that was famous, he had a self-acknowledgement field. That's what it was. And then other people feeding into that. So it was like, all I can say is, if I had to try and explain it, because it's not easy, is it, to explain different energies. It definitely wasn't a high frequency, but it had a power. And it was hypnotic. It was like a milky cream, right? So it wasn't thick. It was fluid, but it was slightly hypnotizing if you hadn't have been somebody like myself who was very skilled with going into higher mind. So I was able to deal with him as a normal human being, but I felt it for the first time ever of somebody who was like mainlining it out there and who had developed this hypnotic fame energy that was self-created, but also created by others, revering something for one side of him, which was his talent, which I'm not going to go into because some people may pick up on who I'm talking about. But it was really interesting because I'd never felt that before. And I remember talking about it to other people who were around him at the time, about it, what I felt. So another experience, because you need to get this, because then you're going to get what's happening with the whole polyamorous thing. And I felt it here where I live in Mexico, because I dealt with somebody who was and very unhappy about it, but was still in a polyamorous relationship. So I had to deal with it straight on. But so I felt the energy off the person that they were dealing with, who was the man when I met him. And it was really interesting again. But what we need to look at is the energy of this, because you're never going to get it. It's not about an intellectual choice of is this right or is this wrong. Is what energy is this on? And this is how we're going to be ascending into higher realms, of being able to deal with the new frequency that I channeled a book on in 1991 about this new energy continuum that we are entering into. That's what they called it there. The higher beings that I was channeling. Then another experience I've had in my life, and I see all of my experiences as building up to this point where I can be a person who can help in the things that are coming up now for people as to which direction do I go in? Am I making right choices? And the only way you're ever going to find this out is to do what I did, which is I did the work, and I'm still doing the work, and I'm still meditated this morning before I did anything else, in a formal meditation to keep the mastery that I have achieved of my mind, so that I am in higher mind and that I can look at it in a clearer way on an energetic level, because that's what it's about. Your higher self, you are pulling in from the higher dimensions when you are talking from that point. So another experience I had was I was somebody who took on TM, Transcendental Meditation, which is one of the most easiest, best formal meditations you could ever do, where going back all those years ago, like 40 years ago, we had the opportunity of being given a mantra to use. And so I was doing that, but I was then introduced to a group of people, and what I felt off them was a different energy, slightly different. It wasn't like the clear energy, the totally like electrifying clear energy I got from TM after I'd done it for about, practiced this every morning, every evening for 20 minutes each time. It took about 6 months at least to feel the poignancy of it, of what it was doing to me. But then I was introduced to people which I could feel were coming from an open heart. And that was not what I'd experienced with the TM, but I was still looking for. And they invited me to an evening group where all these people were gathered, and then one person would just silently get up when they felt the urge to do so and sit in a certain chair, and they would then carry out with what I was told after this event was satsang, which does mean speaking from the heart. And I was so, again, pulled by this. So I went on the path of being initiated into yet another technique of meditation, which again is very formal. And I was introduced to the fact that I could meet Muraji. That was his name, the guru from the East coming to the West. And I was like still in my arrogance and thinking, well, I don't know, is it any use going to see this guy? Like, I have the knowledge that he's imparted through an initiator to me, and I'm loving it. But do I need to meet this man? So I went to, I think it was the Albert Hall in London, because I wasn't somebody who then chased him around the world. I chased the truth. Many people chase the gurus around the world to get a fix off the energy, which is what I'm talking about. I didn't do that. I only ever saw him when he occasionally came to England. And then I didn't carry on seeing him. I carried on my path and teaching others. And but this first time was wonderful, because what happened was you had to queue up throughout. It was a winding path throughout the whole of the Albert Hall, which held thousands of people. And so it was a long way, and you just stood, because we were already meditators, so we could do that. And I was right at the end of a path, and like a line of people. It had done the switchback, and now I was in the direct line of the master, who was sitting on a chair further down this line that I could now see him in the distance. So as I'm walking and keeping pace, I'm watching what he does, which he just looks at the person, and they look at him, or they don't. Some of them didn't look at him, and I didn't understand why, because isn't that what it's all about? Goodness, this was an opportunity. This was the man who had taught me something that I was going to treasure throughout my life, a knowledge that I didn't have before I met his initiator. But so there were all sorts of things going on. Actually, some people fell to the ground. That was really weird. And I was thinking, well, I don't know what that's about. So I'm in full ego still, really, about who I am, because I've never met anybody like this. And as we get closer and closer, I'm about 10 back from him. And what he's doing is, before he looks at the new person that comes in front of him for like a minute or even a half a minute, he's looking down the line, because this is what he does. This is like, and I didn't understand this. This is Dharma. He's giving Dharma. This is Darshan, actually. I think it was called Darshan. I'm going back 40 years here. But I'll never forget what happened. And he looks, and as he looks along the line, I understand what he's doing. I'm the person down that line that he sees in the distance and catches my eye. Well, from that moment, I'm totally changed in my energy field, because his energy touched mine for a second. And then I'm moving up, but I'm now in I've got no mind. I've got no thoughts at all coming in. He gave me that experience, which I now love, because I can have it in my life for a lot of my life. I can live in that way. But it didn't come from him just giving it to me for a second. It came because I did the practice. But this was the experience I needed to see the possibility. So I'm now in this state, and it's not a hypnotic, like when I'm talking about the fame guy. I'm not being pulled in without something happening. It's like cool, calm, electrifying. And I'm so totally present. I can't say I can't believe it, because I didn't have thoughts in the head. But I'm walking towards him, and now I'm in front of him. And as I come that close into his energy field, I can't look at him. I bowed my head. Never thought I'd ever, in my ego, bow my head in front of any man, to be quite honest. I'm a Libran, I'm Queen of Swords when it comes down to it. And it was like electrifying, the thought that went through my head afterwards, but not for a while. I didn't have thoughts for a long time. What happened was I bowed my head because I could not have eye contact with the purity that I felt, and the clarity and the clearness. And then I just walked on. And I was in this state of like clear bliss. And we all made our way back to the seats. And now I could see why there was a silence still in the room from even those people who had been in front of him. And I just sat in my seat. And it was many, many minutes. It might have been about 20 before I could even speak, or before any of my counterparts who were with me could speak either. Because what we were shown was being totally present and in connection with your higher self and your own divinity, because we'd been in front of a man who could hold that, and he was holding that for others. So my experiences are quite extreme that I've had. So what I'm trying to, let's take us back now to Diddy and Diddy's energy, and so many people who've come into that trial space. I mean, I've only seen little snippets of this in videos that have popped up on my feed, but it's been quite incredible. These intelligent people who've led incredible careers, who were pulled in by the control, and it's not good control, by the fear that he imparted in them from his over egotistical and overly obsessive sexuality field. And all of them have said that they couldn't get it out of their minds. They had nightmares about it. And this is the difference, okay? So we're looking at the fame energy, which is like hypnotic and kind of thick. It had a creamy consistency to it. That's the only way I can explain it. And I've noticed it again later on when I met other people that came to me for mentoring. And then we have that incredible clarity from somebody who has spent their life in meditation and in contact with the higher fields, like a real guru I'm talking about here. And so what are we looking at when somebody comes through and they've built a popularity on the internet? They've been friends with Joe Rogan, who already had popularity, and they've kind of come off the edge of that. And they're setting themselves up, and they're using different words like Aubrey Marcus, and they're self-aggrandizing themselves into the guru position. And they're now coming in full-blown into what they say is giving new spiritual insights and into relationships. That's where you stop being accepted by the world of people who really are doing the work. And this is why we're having to come forward. I saw briefly this morning another woman who said, listen, I didn't think I was going to come forward again, because she'd already, like me, done another video, but she said she had to. And that's the same for me. This is what I teach. And I teach it through the fact that I can live it. And this is where we're going to go into the energy side of what he is saying. And like I said, I find it horrendous with like the video I watched on via Lana, which was set up. And what Aubrey Marcus did was he played her handler throughout the 20 minutes that I watched. Because I watched it until I heard them say not... I'm trying to think what they headed it up. The real fuck, I think they headed it up as her sexual like journey, which just I find horrendous anyway. And that's not because I can't say that word. It's because I know there's a huge difference between making love in a high vibration of a divine union and just having sex. But I watched for 20 minutes, and at about just before that mark, they actually mentioned she mentioned the words making love as being like almost a small part of the journey of having wild sex. And they were going into why Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible had to be done at the time, because people, the Bible was trying to stop people coming to sexual ecstasy, and the whole thing about this is most people do not understand sexual ecstasy, and anybody who is trying to have more and more partners is not getting the divine union sexual ecstasy journey. Just after, this is going back 40 years, when I had my first encounter with my twin flame, it was very shocking that there was this energetic situation going on between us. And I think we did both not understand it. And I was a person who had already been meditating for over a year. And in my first year of meditation, with this particular formal meditation, I'd been asked to do it an hour twice a day. So I was in a profound awake and aware state when I met him. But we did not dive, and there was no impulse when you're on a divine union journey to dive straight into the sexual relationship, because there is so much more to dive into. And this is where it's all going wrong with what's being put out there by the Aubrey Marcus fraternity, I'm going to call it. Because what you first dive into, or you don't even dive into it, you connect on an energetic level that you've never had with any other partner. I was a mother with 3 children when I met my divine flame. Divine partner, whatever. It didn't carry on for that long at that point, I will add here, but it was definitely that. And there was something inside of me that always knew that. And I had known about the myth of it, if you like, which wasn't a myth at all, but we weren't ready for it in my early days. But it was coming through for me then. And we spent hours, and we never questioned it. When we first used to meet at either his place, my place, whatever, we used to sit and look into each other's eyes. Now, we never questioned. Why didn't we question that? I'm talking about 2 hours, 3 hours. 3 hours, I think, was the max. But we were totally in a portal of ecstasy that neither of us had ever experienced ever before. And it was weeks before we actually got into a sexual relationship, although we slept in the same bed often. But it was so pure, so innocent, and so high energy. And it was incredible, but it wasn't wild, masculine, crazy sex, which is what I've heard Aubrey talk about. And certainly we couldn't have pulled anybody else into this. It was such an incredible union. And that's all I can say here. But when we did, and it was almost felt, and I remember, I think it was actually me that decided that I really wanted to push that and go into the full sexual relationship. And I kind of regret that, really, but I'm pretty sure it was me that pushed it further, because it started to feel odd, when you've had all these other relationships, and I didn't know where it was going. I was going to say a divorced person. I was a divorced person because I was not in a relationship. We had ended our relationship 6 months to a year before that, and we were both friends and we both looked after the children in different abodes, but I wanted to keep it that way, where we healed the conflict we'd had and that we would stay together as parents, which we were doing very well. So that was the situation I was in, but I was obviously involved in my life, and had been, so at E, in full-blown sexual relationships. But anyway, the first time we did this, it was really weird, because the next morning I remember getting up and thinking about it and thinking, what the heck did he think to that? Because there was no push to have an orgasm, and there always is in a normal relationship, and there wasn't. And I had no idea at that time about tantric or Taoist sexual activity, which is what I went on to get into. So what was happening there was that we were having a sexual relationship, but there was no push. And he actually phoned me the next morning. I said, did you think that was weird last night? I think his ego was like, oh my God, she's going to think that I'm not a performer sexually or something, which I didn't. I mean, I just was curious about why that happened. And our relationship, because he wasn't somebody who'd done any work on himself at all, and I think and he was younger than me. So he needed to go off and live his life. Anyway, which he did, and we parted. And I kept very open, because I already had clients that I was working with on an intuitive level. I had to heal what happened when we went into separation, because I don't think he did, but I definitely did, because I wanted to be that highly intuitive, connected person with my clients. That's what made me heal every part of it. So I kept my heart open. But what happened to me, some months later down the road, when the heartache had gone, I met somebody else who was in a mastership of Taoist sexuality. And that just blew my mind, because he was teaching me what we came across as the divine male and divine feminine by accident. And it was definitely, we had other experiences actually before we broke that and went into separation. We had other experiences where I went into full-blown experiences of visions of our past lives together in Egypt. And that was by him just coming towards me like the divine masculine often does, and he just wanted to touch me. And he went behind me and touched my shoulders and then my forehead, if I remember rightly. He was a young man, much younger than me. He didn't have any idea of what was going on. At least I was a meditator. But anyway, I went into full-blown vision, which I've never forgotten, about our couple of lives in Egypt. So in this Taoist relationship, I learn about the man not ejaculating, saving his life force, because men lose their life force through ejaculation. So I started to learn through that experience. That was about a year of that relationship, which was what it was for, and we ended up parting ways. And I knew that the next relationship I had, which was an amazing relationship with somebody who was in the same profession as me, and I was running a center for intuitive living at the time. So this, that was what we formed together. Goodness, I'm going back here, like, as I said, nearly 40 years here. I was running a vegetarian restaurant and a whole food shop. And I was seeing clients, working with clients every day, helping them on their path. And we started coming together in business first. And then he did have a relationship he was in, and he was starting to come towards me, and I could see him flirting with me. And I just said to him, listen, I'm loving that we're going into business together, and we're going to open this, Center for Intuitive Living in this building with what else I've got set up here. But I'm not going to have an affair with you. And that was the moment I really pulled through on the sisterhood of women and would not do that. I could feel the pull myself to this person, who I had known this person ever since I was a child. And then there was a big separation. And I'd always thought that there was a connection between us, but I wasn't going to do that. So he ended that relationship, and we eventually came together. And I said to him, before we got sexual, I just said to him, listen, I can't do this in what people would call the normal way. I've discovered the essence of a union in sexuality that I can't forget. And I just threw him the book, Mantak Chia, Cultivating Male Sexual Energy. I had both. I had both books ever since that relationship with the Taoist guy, which was Cultivating Female Sexual Energy and Cultivating Male Energy, because I wanted to understand it from the male point of view if I was ever going to have another relationship. Anyway, he really took to it. He said, wow, that's great. Yeah. And he read that book on the train with a brown paper cover, because he used to go also to another healing center. So he used to read it. And we had an amazing 3.5-year Taoist relationship. So I understood what it's like to make love for a long period of time without the male ejaculation. I mean, he really went for it. He went for the mastership, and the masters, the Taoist masters, who lived a very long life because they weren't losing their life energy, their life force through constant ejaculation. And he went for the 100 times making love without ejaculating. And it was an amazing journey. And it was like, during my work, I'm going to go a bit more here into my work as a therapist, because I became fascinated by it and understanding that this was something that all humans should know about, the real alchemy of lovemaking. And I used to ask the female clients that I had on regular appointments, I used to ask them out and say to them, this is research I'm doing. How are you in your relationship with your man? Do you really feel totally satisfied? And I never met a woman who was totally satisfied, because when they were really truthful, because the whole thing about it is when a man ejaculates, he goes into what's called a petit mal, the little death or the big death for some men, where they have no energy whatsoever and they just die on that level. And they might say, listen, give me a few minutes. But it's nothing like a Taoist lovemaking session, I can tell you that, which can go on for hours. And with the guy that I was with for 3.5 years, we'd get up in the morning and run the center and have high energy, even to go on and run workshops in the evening, because it never depleted his energy. And it never depleted mine, because the woman doesn't. This is the myth here. They think women get tired out. Goodness, I've heard some things in some of those Aubrey Marcus videos where he's talking about sex. I've actually got some notes here, but I'm not going to read from them. But I remember him saying things thinking, this man knows nothing about the real alchemical sexual journey. And what he's doing in this video that I just watched this morning, part of, with Vailana talking about her new album and her exile out of exile of her sexuality, and he's acting like a handler. The energy was totally handler energy. And her energy was like abused child. I have to say this. This is pretty extreme, but I'm going to say the truth because that's what I'm here for. And I'm going to be doing more videos on energy, but I wanted to get you to look at this for what it is on an energetic level when you're able to feel that. And the only way you're ever going to do that is either go celibate for a while yourself. I mean, right now I've been celibate for the last 22 years and I feel great on it. I mean, it doesn't affect me at all in the way of energy lack. I mean, my energy is high flying. And if you even 6 months, go 6 months celibate, that's definitely what Aubrey Marcus should do. If I was his therapist, and I have offered a free session on one of my first videos, responding to this. But if he went 6 months celibate and no masturbation, I've had clients of mine who used to come into my center, buy the books, the Mantak Chia books, which are available on Amazon, by the way, and I don't get money off that. I'm just telling you because I want everybody to understand the real alchemical sexual journey. And I would be giving them this information. They'd come to me and it would come up. I would get downloads on it for them and say, listen, do you understand how much that's depleting you? You're relieving your stress by ejaculation, and what's happening is you're depleting your life energy. And I had so many of them guys who out of sessions would really want to tell me what they'd experienced. So they would ring me up. I'd be at home in the evening and I'd get this call and this guy would say, listen, I'm sorry to interrupt your life, but I've got to tell you that I feel fantastic. I've not masturbated for 2 weeks and my energy and my mind is so clear and my energy's so high. And they were starting to get it, right? And all the information, these are thick books, Cultivating Female Sexual Energy, Cultivating Male. And for all the women out there, get both, because you need to understand the man's journey. And there are certain things that we can do to help the man on that journey. And I've certainly used that with later, partnerships that I had where the man wasn't going to really dive into it right away. But, there were things I could help. Anyway. So energy, start to feel your own. How's your own feeling? Are people drawn into your energy in a good way because they feel you walk in a room? Or are they thinking, who is that person? There's a mucky energy. I mean, I do this all the time. And then I'll go in and ask. And recently I was around somebody who used to pop around me a bit. And I got in real download on what I was feeling in the energy. And it was like, oh, okay, don't go near that. Don't be invited into that energy. And it's possible to do all of this when you understand that this is our antennae. It's like thousands and thousands of little antennae that can read what's coming towards you and can help you enormously. It's all about frequency, resonance, energy. And this is what sexuality is about. I don't have to call it the F word. In fact, think about that. Sit and say that. Making love. And then say the F word. And what you've got is such a different resonance. It has a different effect on your body. It isn't cool to keep using the F word on this, talking about your sexuality. It's not cool at all. That went out years ago to be cool. You're just out of date, Aubrey. You need to get trained up now on the real information. Please subscribe so that I can get this information out to more souls who really want to live the full life on the high energy level in every way. Please like the video. That would be great. And comment. Have you heard about the Taoist? Have you heard about Mantak Chia? Tell me the things that have happened to you with men who do not understand the energy. Us women get to talk about this on my channel. Bye for now. Catch me tomorrow. I'm going to keep going. I have this urge in me to give every bit of information that I hold. Bye for now.